The cabin stood alone at the edge of the forest, far from roads, cities, and human voices. It was a place chosen by a man who wanted silence more than comfort. He had built the cabin himself, deep in the wilderness, where the nights were dark, and the stars felt close enough to touch. People in nearby towns believed no one lived there anymore, but the man preferred it that way. Solitude kept him safe. It kept him unnoticed. And on most nights, that was enough. That night, the forest felt different. The wind moved with a low, uneasy sound, and the trees creaked as if whispering to one another. Rain began to fall, slow at first, then heavier, tapping against the cabin's roof like impatient fingers. The man sat by the small wooden table, reading by the soft glow of a lantern. He was used to storms. He was used to strange noises. The forest always tested those who lived inside it. Still, something about this night made him pause. Then he heard it. A sharp sound, followed by a faint, uneven movement outside. Not the step of an animal, not the crash of a falling branch. It was slower, weaker, almost desperate. The man set his book down. He listened. The sound came again, closer now, followed by what could only be described as a low, broken breath. His hand moved toward the old rifle resting near the wall, but he stopped himself. Fear was useful, but panic was deadly. He took a deep breath, lifted the lantern, and moved toward the door. When he opened it, cold rain rushed inside. The lantern's light cut through the darkness, revealing wet earth, bent grass, and something lying just beyond the steps. At first, his mind refused to understand what his eyes were seeing. The shape was wrong, too tall, too thin. Its skin shimmered faintly, reflecting colors that did not belong to the forest. Large glassy eyes blinked slowly, unfocused, and its chest rose and fell with painful effort. It was not human. The man froze. Every instinct told him to step back, to shut the door, to pretend he had seen nothing. Stories from books and old warnings echoed in his thoughts. Aliens meant danger. Aliens meant death. His finger tightened around the lantern handle as the creature lifted one trembling hand toward him. The alien made a sound, not a word. Just a dry, broken noise like air scraping through stone. Its lips cracked as it pointed weakly toward the water barrel beside the cabin. The meaning was clear. It was dying of thirst. Rain poured from the sky, yet the alien could not drink it. The man's heart pounded as he stood there, trapped between fear and something deeper. He did not know where the creature came from. He did not know what it wanted, but he knew what it meant to be alone, weak, and ignored by the world. Slowly, carefully, he stepped forward. He filled a metal cup from the barrel and knelt a short distance away. The alien watched him closely, eyes glowing faintly as if measuring his intent. The man hesitated only for a second before extending the cup. If this was a mistake, it would be his last. Still, he did not pull away. The alien drank, not gently, not carefully. It drank as if every drop was life itself. Water spilled down its chin, soaking into the ground, but the creature did not stop until the cup was empty. When it finished, it looked up at the man. Something changed in its expression. The fear faded. In its place was shock. And something else, recognition. The alien straightened with surprising strength. It touched its chest, then pointed at the man. Its voice was stronger now, clear in a way that sent a chill through the air. Though the words were unfamiliar, the meaning was not. A promise had been spoken. Without another sound, the alien stepped back into the forest. Its form blurred, light bending strangely around it, and then it was gone. The rain continued to fall, as if nothing had happened at all. The man stood in the doorway for a long time, staring into the darkness. Eventually, he closed the door and locked it, telling himself it was over. Just a strange moment. Just another secret of the forest. He did not know that far beyond the trees, far beyond the sky, a signal had been sent. And by morning, his quiet life would end forever. The alien did not stop running until the forest was far behind it, and the air around its body began to shimmer with hidden energy. Its steps were no longer weak, no longer unsteady. The water had done more than save its life. It had awakened something ancient and binding deep within its blood. As the scout reached a clearing beneath the open sky, symbols along its skin began to glow, responding to a law far older than Earth itself. This alien was not a wanderer and not a victim of chance. It was a pathfinder from the Karzoon, a warrior civilization ruled entirely by women, feared across multiple star systems. Their society was built on strict codes of honor, survival, and debt. Among those laws, one stood above all others. Life given through water could never be repaid with violence. It was a sacred act that demanded loyalty until death. Kneeling in the clearing, the scout pressed its hand to the ground and released a pulse of energy into the soil. The signal traveled upward through the atmosphere and beyond the stars, reaching a fleet hidden between folds of space. The message was simple, but its meaning was enormous. A life had been saved by a human. A bond had been formed. Protocol demanded immediate response. High above Earth, inside a massive warship, alarms echoed through cold metal halls. Warrior women paused mid-training and turned toward the command chamber. The name of the human world spread quickly among them, carried by shock and disbelief. Humans were known throughout the galaxy as fragile creatures, short-lived and divided. Yet history also recorded something else about them. When humans acted by choice rather than fear, entire civilizations shifted. The fleet commander stood silently as the report ended. Her armor bore scars from dozens of campaigns, and her eyes reflected centuries of conquest. Still, this message unsettled her. A human had offered water without demand, without knowing the cost. That alone placed him under the highest protection of their law. Ignoring it would tear their society apart. The order was given. 200 warriors were chosen, not soldiers, but guardians. Each one sworn to defend the life debt with absolute loyalty. Their ships turned toward Earth, slipping into faster-than-light travel without ceremony. No invasion banners were raised. No weapons were primed. This was not a war mission. It was something far more serious. Back on Earth, the human knew none of this. He moved through his small cabin as the storm faded into silence. He cleaned the spilled water from the floor and tried to return to his routine. He told himself the creature had been an illusion born from isolation. Yet every so often, he found himself staring at the empty cup, feeling an unexplainable weight in his chest. As night deepened, unfamiliar stars shifted overhead. Satellites failed for brief moments. Animals in the forest grew restless there, instincts sensing something approaching from above. The air itself felt charged, heavy with anticipation. In orbit, unseen by human eyes, alien vessels slowed and aligned. Scans confirmed the location of the cabin. The human was still alive. That alone brought relief to the warriors. They would arrive at dawn, as tradition required. First light symbolized clarity and truth. It was the only proper time to reveal a life debt. But not everyone watched in silence. Across the galaxy, rival factions intercepted fragments of the signal. Whispers spread quickly. A human had been claimed under Karzoon protection. Such an alliance could shift power balances that had remained stable for centuries. To some, it was unacceptable. To others, it was an opportunity. As Earth slept, forces began to move. Inside the cabin, the man finally lay down, unaware that his kindness had crossed species and rewritten ancient law. He believed the forest would greet him the same way in the morning. Quiet, empty, safe. Dawn was coming. And with it, the answer to a promise he never knew he had made. The first light of dawn crept slowly through the trees, painting the forest in soft shades of gold and gray. Birds should have been singing, but the woods were silent. The man noticed it the moment he opened his eyes. Silence in the forest was never normal. It was a warning. He sat up on his bed, listening carefully, his body tense, his senses alert in a way he could not explain. He stepped outside his cabin with cautious movements, the cool morning air brushing against his skin. Dew clung to the grass, and a thin mist hung low between the trees. At first, everything seemed unchanged. Then he looked closer. Shapes stood where there had been none before. Tall figures lined the clearing, motionless and evenly spaced, their silhouettes sharp against the rising sun. His breath caught. They were not animals. They were not human. 200 alien warrior women surrounded the cabin in perfect formation. Their armor reflected the morning light with a soft metallic glow. Each one carried weapons unlike anything the man had ever seen, sleek and silent, yet clearly powerful. Their posture was disciplined, controlled, and calm. Not a single one moved as he stepped fully into view. Fear surged through him, sharp and cold. His hand moved instinctively toward the cabin door, but he stopped. Running would change nothing. If they had come to kill him, he would already be dead. The thought grounded him, forcing his panic into focus. Slowly, something unexpected happened. One by one, the warriors lowered themselves to one knee. The sound was soft but unified, a deliberate motion filled with meaning. The man stood frozen, unable to understand what he was witnessing. Warriors did not kneel to pray. Armies did not bow to a lone man in a wooden cabin. A figure stepped forward. From the formation. She was taller than the rest, her presence commanding without effort. Her armor was marked with symbols that pulsed faintly with energy. When she removed her helmet, her face was calm, her eyes sharp and intelligent. There was no hatred in them, only certainty. She spoke. The words were strange, shaped by a language not born on Earth, yet the meaning reached him clearly, as if carried by more than sound. She spoke of a life saved. She spoke of water given freely. She spoke of an ancient law older than their stars. The man listened in silence, his fear slowly giving way to disbelief. He tried to remind them that he was just a man. He had done nothing special. Anyone would have given water to a dying being. His voice felt small in the open air, but he spoke. Anyway, the commander listened without interruption, then shook her head. Humans, she explained, were unique. They acted without calculation. They helped without certainty of reward. To the Karzoon, this was not weakness. It was a form of strength they rarely encountered and never forgot. The warriors had not come to claim his land or his life. They had come to fulfill a debt. His safety was now bound to their honor. Any threat against him would be answered as a threat against their people. The man felt the weight of those words settle over him. Protection on such a scale was not a gift. It was a responsibility. He looked at the warriors again and realized they were watching him closely, not as a ruler, not as a master, but as something far more dangerous. A symbol. Without warning, distant thunder rolled across the sky. It was not natural. The commander turned her gaze upward, her expression hardening. Long-range scanners had detected movement. Other ships were approaching Earth's orbit. Not all species respected the law of water. The warriors rose to their feet in perfect unison. Weapons powered on, humming softly with restrained energy. The air around the cabin shifted as invisible shields activated, wrapping the clearing in silent defense. The man felt it then, the truth he could no longer ignore. His quiet life was gone. The forest that had hidden him now marked him. The choice he had made with a single cup of water had reached far beyond his understanding. As the sun climbed higher, shadows passed briefly over the land. Something massive moved above the clouds. The galaxy had noticed him. And this was only the beginning. The warriors did not move to attack, they waited. Discipline ran deeper in them than instinct, and every action followed law and tradition. The clearing around the cabin felt heavier now, as if the air itself understood the importance of what was unfolding. The man stood among them, surrounded by silent strength, struggling to understand how his life had turned into the center of something so vast. The commander raised her hand and the warriors relaxed slightly, though their weapons remained ready. She began to explain the truth behind their presence, speaking slowly so the meaning would reach him clearly. Among her people, water was more than survival, it was sacred. On countless worlds, battles had been fought over it, civilizations shaped by its absence. To give water freely to an enemy or stranger was to offer life itself, and life once given could never be taken back. She told him of the law of water, a rule carved into their history through blood and loss. Long ago, a war had nearly destroyed their species when that law was broken. Since then, no exception had ever been allowed. A life saved by water became protected by all, regardless of species or status. The human had unknowingly bound himself to their fate, just as they were now bound to his. The man listened quietly, his thoughts racing. He had never asked for guardians or armies. He had wanted only peace and isolation. He asked what would happen if he refused their protection. The commander met his gaze without hesitation. Refusal was not permitted. Honor could not be denied. To do so would invite chaos not only for them, but for him as well. Above them, the sky darkened slightly as clouds shifted. The commander explained that other factions had already detected their arrival. Some feared humans gaining powerful allies. Others believed capturing him could force the Karzun into Kudzun. War, his existence alone, had become a strategic concern. A distant vibration passed through the ground. The warriors responded instantly, forming a defensive circle around the cabin. Energy fields flared softly at their feet. Sensors tracked unknown objects entering low orbit. The man felt a strange calm settle over him. Panic would not help. He had lived alone long enough to understand that fear wasted time. He spoke again, asking why they did not simply hide him or remove him from Earth. The commander hesitated, then answered truthfully. Their law demanded visibility. Protection only had meaning if it was seen. If enemies believed humans could be taken quietly, more would come. The safest place for him was where all could see he was not alone. The idea unsettled him. He had spent years avoiding attention, and now he was being placed under the gaze of the stars. Still, he understood the logic. Strength, when hidden, invited challenge. Strength, when known, created distance. As the explanation ended, a new signal reached. The warriors. Hostile ships had moved closer. Not attacking yet, but watching, testing. The commander's expression hardened. She turned to the man and asked a question that surprised him. How would a human respond to a threat that had not yet struck? He answered honestly. Humans did not always fight first. Sometimes they spoke. Sometimes they waited. Sometimes they prepared in silence. That answer caused a ripple among the warriors. To them, hesitation was weakness. Yet history showed that humans who waited often survived what others did not. The commander considered his words. Then she gave an order that shocked her own ranks. No weapons would be fired unless attacked. Shields would remain active, but communication channels would open. The man would be allowed to speak if the enemy made contact. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Above the clearing, shapes became visible through thinning clouds. Massive vessels hovered at the edge of sight, dark and angular. The air vibrated with contained power. A voice echoed through the sky, demanding surrender of the protected human. The man stepped forward. He felt every eye on him, human and alien alike. He had no weapon, no armor, only the memory of a simple choice made without thought of consequence. He did not know if his words would matter, but he knew one thing. If humanity was to be judged by the galaxy, it would be judged by how it faced this moment. And the moment had arrived.
The clearing felt smaller as the massive shapes above settled into position. Shadows moved slowly across the trees and over the cabin roof. The warriors stood firm around the man, shields humming with controlled energy, eyes fixed on the sky. Every instinct within them demanded action, yet they waited. The human had been given the right to speak, and among the Karzan, law mattered more than impulse. The voice returned, amplified and cold, demanding compliance. It spoke of balance, of fear, of the danger humans represented when protected by warrior civilizations. The demand was simple. Hand over the human and the conflict would end before it began. The threat behind the words was clear. The man stepped forward again, moving beyond the protective line of shields. A low murmur spread among the warriors, but no one stopped him. He looked small beneath the open sky, an unarmed figure facing forces that could erase his world if they chose to. Still, his posture was steady. His fear did not disappear, but it did not control him either. He spoke calmly, his voice carrying across the clearing through translation fields he did not understand. He did not threaten. He did not beg. He asked why the galaxy feared a species that had offered nothing but survival to a stranger. He reminded them that power without restraint always collapsed under its own weight. Humans had learned that lesson painfully, again and again. The enemy did not expect this response. Silence followed. Sensors across multiple ships recorded something unusual. The human was not posturing. He was not stalling. He was choosing reason in a moment designed to provoke violence. Among the warriors, something shifted. They had seen courage on battlefields and honor in sacrifice, but this was different. This was standing unguarded before destruction and refusing to be ruled by it. To them, it was unsettling. The commander watched closely. This was why humans were dangerous. Not because of their weapons, but because of their ability to act against instinct. She saw her warriors recalibrating their understanding in real time. A human without armor was reshaping their worldview. The hostile fleet responded at last. The voice returned, less certain now. They claimed the humans' words were irrelevant. Law and tradition meant nothing in the face of strategic necessity. The man listened, then replied with a single statement that echoed far beyond the clearing. If they attacked, they would prove humans right about the galaxy. If they walked away, they would prove humans wrong. It was not a challenge. It was an invitation. Long moments passed. Energy readings fluctuated as weapons powered up and then powered down. The enemy commanders argued among themselves, their fear clashing with logic. Engaging the Karzan openly would cost too much. Attacking a protected human in full view of witnesses would brand them forever. The decision came quietly. The ships began to pull back. Relief swept through the clearing, but it was not celebration. The warriors remained alert until the last vessel vanished from the sky. Only then did the commander lower her hand. The shields faded. The forest sounds slowly returned, as if life itself had been holding its breath. The man exhaled, realizing how tense his body had been. He turned to the commander, expecting approval or judgment. Instead, he saw something closer to respect. She acknowledged that his choice had prevented war. Not through strength, but through understanding. She told him that among her people, such control was rare. Warriors trained their whole lives to master fear through combat. Humans, it seemed, mastered it through thought. That made them unpredictable in a way no simulation could account for. The warriors began to withdraw slightly, returning to formation. They would remain nearby, hidden but ready. Protection would continue, though it would not be obvious. The man was not a ruler or a symbol of domination. He was a reminder. Far above Earth, messages spread through hidden channels. Reports described a human who had faced annihilation and chosen dialogue. Analysts and war leaders took note. Humanity's profile changed in quiet ways. Back at the cabin, the man looked at the forest he had once believed was his escape. It was no longer just a refuge. It was now a point of interest in a galaxy that had finally begun to understand something important. Humans were not weak. The withdrawal of the hostile fleet did not bring peace. It brought attention. Signals rippled outward through space, carrying recordings and interpretations of what had happened in the forest clearing. Observers from distant systems replayed the moment again and again, trying to understand how a single unarmed human had forced a superior force to retreat without firing a shot. The conclusion unsettled many of them. Humanity could no longer be dismissed as insignificant. Around the cabin, the warriors shifted their positions. They did not celebrate victory. They prepared for consequence. The commander understood that restraint often invited a second test. Enemies who retreated once would return with sharper strategies or hidden intentions. She ordered long-range sensors deployed and defensive measures expanded beyond the visible perimeter. The forest itself became layered with silent protection. The man watched them work with quiet focus. He asked if war would still come. The commander did not lie. Conflict always followed change. The galaxy adjusted slowly, and humans had just altered a balance that had existed for generations. But she added something unexpected. The first battle would not be fought with weapons. It would be fought with perception. Within days, envoys arrived. Not ships of war, but vessels marked with symbols of neutrality. Species that had never approached Earth now requested observation rights. They wanted to see the human who had been protected by the Karzan. They wanted to understand what kind of species produced such behavior. The man refused to become a spectacle. He would not leave his land or stand on platforms. Instead, he agreed to limited communication. Messages were exchanged. Questions were asked. He answered simply and honestly, never claiming superiority, never denying human flaws. That honesty disarmed more than any weapon. The warriors observed closely. This was another human contradiction. He had gained influence and refused to use it. Power given and not exploited created confusion among species accustomed to dominance. The commander realized this was the true danger humans posed to established hierarchies. One envoy attempted manipulation, suggesting alliances built on control rather than cooperation. The man declined without anger. He explained that humans had tried that path before. It always ended the same way. Ruins and regret. The message spread. Humans were not easy to command. As interest grew, so did resentment. A coalition of minor factions attempted to undermine the situation by spreading misinformation. They claimed the Karzan had been tricked, that the human had exploited their law. This lie did not last long. The scout who had been saved by water stepped forward and told the truth publicly. The story was verified by multiple sources. Honor silenced rumor. The commander made a decision that would define the future. She invited representatives of several species to witness a ritual rarely shared with outsiders. At dawn, in the same clearing, the warriors reaffirmed the life bond. It was not performed for the human. It was performed for the galaxy. The man stood quietly as ancient symbols glowed and faded. He felt the weight of it but did not claim ownership. He remained what he had always been. A human who made a choice. That choice began to echo. Across space, military doctrines were revised. Analysts noted that humans acted outside predictable patterns. They could escalate or de-escalate without warning. They valued individuals over systems yet defended systems fiercely once built. They were dangerous not because they sought power but because they reacted strongly when forced. The concept unsettled empires. Back in the forest, the warriors prepared to depart. Their mission was complete. Protection would remain through distant watch rather than physical presence. The commander met the man one final time. She told him that history would remember this moment differently depending on who told it. Some would call him lucky. Others would call him a threat. Her people would call him something else entirely. A reminder that strength could begin with restraint. As the ships lifted silently and vanished into the sky, the forests returned to normal. Birds sang again. The air felt lighter. The man stood alone once more in front of his cabin. But he was not isolated anymore. The galaxy had learned a lesson. And it was only waiting to see how humanity would use it. The withdrawal of the hostile fleet did not bring peace. It brought attention. Signals rippled outward through space, carrying recordings and interpretations of what had happened in the forest clearing. Observers from distant systems replayed the moment again and again, trying to understand how a single unarmed human had forced a superior force to retreat without firing a shot. The conclusion unsettled many of them. Humanity could no longer be dismissed as insignificant. Around the cabin, the warriors shifted their positions. They did not celebrate victory. They prepared for consequence. The commander understood that restraint often invited a second test. Enemies who retreated once would return with sharper strategies or hidden intentions. She ordered long-range sensors deployed and defensive measures expanded beyond the visible perimeter. The forest itself became layered with silent protection. The man watched them work with quiet focus. He asked if war would still come. The commander did not lie. Conflict always followed change. The galaxy adjusted slowly, and humans had just altered a balance that had existed for generations. But she added something unexpected. The first battle would not be fought with weapons. It would be fought with perception. Within days, envoys arrived. Not ships of war, but vessels marked with symbols of neutrality. Species that had never approached Earth now requested observation rights. They wanted to see the human who had been protected by the Karzan. They wanted to understand what kind of species produced such behavior. The man refused to become a spectacle. He would not leave his land or stand on platforms. Instead, he agreed to limited communication. Messages were exchanged. Questions were asked. He answered simply and honestly, never claiming superiority, never denying human flaws. That honesty disarmed more than any weapon. The warriors observed closely. This was another human contradiction. He had gained influence and refused to use it. Power given and not exploited created confusion among species accustomed to dominance. The commander realized this was the true danger humans posed to established hierarchies. One envoy attempted manipulation, suggesting alliances built on control rather than cooperation. The man declined without anger. He explained that humans had tried that path before. It always ended the same way. Ruins and regret. The message spread. Humans were not easy to command. As interest grew, so did resentment. A coalition of minor factions attempted to undermine the situation by spreading misinformation. They claimed the Karzan had been tricked, that the human had exploited their law. This lie did not last long. The scout who had been saved by water stepped forward and told the truth publicly. The story was verified by multiple sources. Honor silenced rumor. The commander made a decision that would define the future. She invited representatives of several species to witness a ritual rarely shared with outsiders. At dawn, in the same clearing, the warriors reaffirmed the life bond. It was not performed for the human. It was performed for the galaxy. The man stood quietly as ancient symbols glowed and faded. He felt the weight of it but did not claim ownership. He remained what he had always been. A human who made a choice. That choice began to echo. Across space, military doctrines were revised. Analysts noted that humans acted outside predictable patterns. They could escalate or de-escalate without warning. They valued individuals over systems yet defended systems fiercely once built. They were dangerous not because they sought power but because they reacted strongly when forced. The concept unsettled empires. Back in the forest, the warriors prepared to depart. Their mission was complete. Protection would remain through distant watch rather than physical presence. The commander met the man one final time. She told him that history would remember this moment differently depending on who told it. Some would call him lucky. Others would call him a threat. Her people would call him something else entirely. A reminder that strength could begin with restraint. As the ships lifted silently and vanished into the sky, the forests returned to normal. Birds sang again. The air felt lighter. The man stood alone once more in front of his cabin. But he was not isolated anymore. The galaxy had learned a lesson. And it was only waiting to see how humanity would use it. The forest slowly returned to the rhythm it had always known. Morning light filtered through the trees and rested gently on the cabin as if nothing extraordinary had ever happened there. The man stepped outside and breathed in the familiar scent of earth and leaves. For the first time since the arrival of the warriors, the silence felt natural again. Yet he knew the truth. Nothing was the same, even if it looked unchanged. Far beyond the sky, the consequences of his choice continued to spread. Records of the event were archived across multiple civilizations. Analysts debated it in halls of power. Philosophers argued over it in learning chambers. Military leaders studied it with unease. A human had altered interstellar behavior without violence. That fact alone forced the galaxy to rethink long-held assumptions. Among the cars in the story became legend. Warrior trainees were taught the lesson of the water giver. Not as a tale of conquest, but as a reminder of restraint. Strength, they learned, was not only measured by force but by the ability to choose mercy without fear. The commander herself recorded the event as a turning point in her people's understanding of humanity. On Earth, no celebrations followed. No announcements were made. Governments sensed something had shifted but could not see it clearly yet. Satellites recorded strange readings and then nothing more. Humanity remained largely unaware that it had gained quiet allies among the stars. The man returned to his daily routine. He repaired the cabin roof. He gathered wood. He walked the forest paths as he always had. Yet sometimes he would pause and look up at the sky. He felt watched not in threat but in awareness. Somewhere far away, eyes were observing not with weapons but with curiosity. One evening, as the sun dipped below the trees, a familiar shimmer appeared at the edge of the clearing. The scout emerged briefly and bowed its head in respect. It did not speak. It did not need to. The bond had already been sealed. With a final nod, it vanished once more into the fading light. That night the man sat by his window and thought about the moment that had changed everything. He realized he did not regret it. He would have done the same thing again. That truth mattered more than any title or protection. Humanity had not been judged by its strength or its technology. It had been judged by a single choice made without witnesses. Across the galaxy, new policies quietly formed. Worlds once ignored by empires found space to negotiate. Conflicts slowed as leaders reconsidered first strikes. Not because they feared humans, but because they feared misunderstanding them. A species capable of mercy without weakness could not be easily controlled. In time, stories spread among alien cultures. They spoke of humans as unpredictable but fair. Soft-spoken yet stubborn. Fragile yet terrifying when cornered. A species that could build weapons powerful enough to end worlds but still choose to offer water to an enemy. Back in the forest, the man closed his door for the night. The cabin was still small. The world inside it was still simple. But its meaning had grown beyond borders and stars. He was not a hero. He was not a leader. He was proof. Proof that humanity did not need permission to matter. As the stars turned overhead, unseen ships maintained their distant watch. Not as guards but as witnesses. The galaxy waited not for what humans could take but for what they would choose next. And somewhere in the vast dark between worlds, a new understanding settled into place. Humanity was no longer alone. Humanity was no longer underestimated. Humanity had arrived.